I found my wife's second phone because our dog started barking at the dryer like there was a person trapped inside it. And when I opened the little drawer underneath to shut him up, a burner phone lit up with her face on the lock screen and a text that said, "You can't keep sneaking out like this. He's starting to notice." For about 5 full seconds, I just stood there in my own laundry room with one sock in my hand, staring at a sentence that felt like it had been written straight into my chest. My wife, Emily, had gone to pick up takeout. That was the normal version of my life at 7:14 that night. At 7:15, I was standing in front of a hidden phone I didn't know existed, reading messages that made my marriage feel like some cruel joke everyone understood, except me. We've been together 11 years, married for 8, the kind of marriage people call solid, because from the outside it looks clean and easy. We have routines, inside jokes, a mortgage, a little golden retriever, and the kind of pictures relatives comment on with, "You two are couple goals." I used to believe that too. Looking back, the signs were there in ways that make me feel stupid now. She started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. She began taking late Target runs, with makeup still on. She'd snap at me for harmless questions, then come back sweet 10 minutes later like she was managing my reactions in real time. A month ago, I asked why she smiled at her screen and then turned it over every time I walked in, and she laughed right in my face and said, "You are getting so paranoid lately. It's honestly unattractive." I remember apologizing to her for asking. That part is what keeps replaying in my head, not even the text itself, but the fact that she trained me to doubt my own instincts so well that I felt guilty for noticing her lies. I shouldn't have opened the phone, but I did, and I wish I could say I hesitated longer than I actually did. The passcode was our wedding date. That hurt more than I can explain. It wasn't just betrayal. It was arrogance. It was her hiding behind something sacred because she never thought I'd be the one holding it. The messages were not vague. They were constant, casual, practiced. There were jokes about me. There were complaints about me. There were whole conversations about how to handle me when I started asking questions. One message from her, sent 2 nights earlier, said, "He still thinks I'm staying with Claire on Thursdays. He wants to trust me so badly it's embarrassing." I actually had to sit down on the tile floor when I read that because Claire is my sister. My own sister. The person who has hugged me in my kitchen and told me, "Don't be hard on Emily. She's under a lot of stress." Then I heard the front door open and Emily call out, all warm and easy, "Babe, they forgot your extra sauce. Don't be mad at me." Like she hadn't just split my life open with a phone hidden under our dryer. I stood up too fast, nearly dropped the burner, and for one wild second I thought about walking out the back door and just disappearing before she saw my face. But then I heard her footsteps getting closer, and right before she turned the corner into the laundry room, another text came through on the hidden screen. It wasn't from the man. It was from Claire, and all it said was, "Did he find out about last weekend?" The screen was still glowing in my hand when I read Claire's message again, and I swear something inside me actually shifted, like my body understood the damage before my mind could catch up. Emily turned the corner, saw my face, then saw the phone, and I watched every emotion move across hers in less than a second. Surprise, panic, calculation. Then that cold little calm she used whenever she wanted to make me feel insane. She set the takeout on top of the washer like none of this was strange and said, way too evenly, "Why are you going through my things?" I just stared at her because there are moments when language stops being useful. I held up the phone and asked, "Why does Claire know about last weekend, and what exactly did I not find out?" She did not answer the question. She folded her arms, tilted her head, and gave me that look she always used when she wanted to climb above the argument and make me beg to be taken seriously. "You broke into a phone that isn't yours, Michael." Do you hear yourself right now? The fact that she said my full name told me she was already switching into defense mode, already building the version of the night she planned to survive with. I asked her who the phone belonged to, and she said, "It's for work," so fast it almost sounded rehearsed. I laughed because it was either laugh or put my fist through the dryer. "Your work texts you that I'm starting to notice?" I said, and her face hardened. She took one step closer and lowered her voice like I was the unstable one, and she was trying to keep me from spiraling. "You have been acting paranoid for weeks, and now you're twisting random messages because you want there to be something wrong." Then I read her own text out loud, the one about Thursdays and how badly I wanted to trust her, and for the first time she flinched. Not with guilt, not with shame, just because I had forced her off script. She snatched for the phone and I pulled it back, and that was the first moment the whole thing turned ugly. "Give it to me," she said through her teeth. "No," I said. "Tell me who he is." She stared at me, jaw tight, and then she actually smiled. "You really think there has to be a man, because your ego can't handle the idea that maybe I just needed space from you." That would have been brutal enough on its own. But then she reached for her real phone in her pocket, and I saw her thumb move before I even understood what she was doing. She was deleting something. I lunged without thinking, grabbed her wrist, and she shouted, "Get off me!" So loudly the dog started barking again. She yanked free, backed into the hallway, and suddenly tears appeared like she had turned them on with a switch. "Look at you," she said, voice shaking in that deliberate, wounded way. "This is why I don't tell you things. This is why I need people to cover for me. You get intense. You corner me. You make everything worse." I felt sick hearing it because 10 seconds earlier I had almost believed I was the one crossing a line. That is what she did better than anybody I've ever known. She could light the fire and then stand in the smoke asking why I was making such a scene. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Claire calling me. Emily saw the name at the exact same time I did, and whatever mask she had left slipped just enough for me to catch the fear under it. I answered on speaker without taking my eyes off her, and before I could say a word, my sister whispered, breathless and terrified, "Mike, do not let her know I called. I think you need to see what's in the storage unit before she gets there first." I didn't even realize I had stopped breathing until Claire said my name again, sharper this time, like she was trying to pull me back into my own body, and all I could think was how impossible this moment felt. Like reality had split into two versions, and I was standing in the one where nothing made sense anymore. Emily was watching me with that tight, controlled expression, her eyes locked on my face, not on the phone, not on Claire's voice, just on me, like she was trying to read how much damage had already been done. I forced myself to speak evenly, even though my chest felt like it was collapsing inward. "What storage unit, Claire?" I asked, and there was a pause on the other end, the kind that says too much has already been said. "The one she told you she closed," Claire whispered, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach, because I remembered that conversation exactly. Remembered Emily sitting across from me at the kitchen table 3 months ago saying, "We don't need it anymore, it's just wasted money." And I had nodded like a fool, like a husband who believed his wife. Emily stepped closer, her voice suddenly softer, almost pleading, and that shift scared me more than the anger. "Hang up the phone," she said quietly. "We can talk about this without your sister getting involved." I didn't move. Claire let out a shaky breath and said, "Mike, I shouldn't have covered for her. I thought it was something else at first, but last weekend." The line cut off. Just dead silence. I stared at my phone, waiting for it to reconnect, but it didn't. Emily didn't look surprised. She didn't look confused. She looked relieved just for a second, before she caught herself and replaced it with concern. "Wow," she said, shaking her head slowly. "She hangs up right when I walk in. You don't think that's weird?" The way she said it, like she was gently guiding me toward a conclusion, made my skin crawl. I asked her, "What happened last weekend?" And she didn't answer right away. She walked past me into the kitchen instead, opened one of the takeout containers, and started unpacking it like we were still living in the version of the night where none of this existed. "You're hungry," she said calmly. "You always get like this when you haven't eaten." I followed her, the burner phone still in my hand. my whole body buzzing with this mix of anger and disbelief that I couldn't steady. "Stop," I said, louder than I meant to. "Stop acting like this is normal." "What happened last weekend?" She set the container down, turned to face me, and I watched her decide, in real time, which version of the truth she was going to give me. "I went to a hotel," she said finally. Just that. No emotion, no apology, just a statement dropped between us like it didn't carry any weight. I felt the room tilt. "With who?" I asked, and she rolled her eyes like I was exhausting her. "You're jumping to conclusions again," she said. "It was for space. I told Claire because I knew you'd overreact, and clearly I was right." I held up the burner phone, my hand shaking now, and said, "Then who is texting you about sneaking out? Who is asking if I'm starting to notice?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, lowered her voice, and said something that made everything worse in a way I didn't even think was possible. "Do you really want to go down this road?" she asked quietly. "Because if I start being honest, you're not going to like what you hear about yourself either." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about her hiding something. This was about her preparing to destroy me if I pushed too hard, like she had been waiting for this exact confrontation and already had weapons lined up. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again in my hand. It wasn't Claire this time. It was a text from an unknown number, just one line, no name attached. "You should ask her why your best friend has a key to that storage unit." I read that message 3 times, maybe 4, and each time it felt less like a sentence and more like a crack spreading through something I thought was unbreakable. My best friend Ryan wasn't just a casual part of my life. He was the person who stood next to me on my wedding day, the one who helped me move into this house, the one who sat on this exact kitchen counter drinking beer with me while Emily laughed in the other room. I didn't realize I had said his name out loud until Emily's face changed, just slightly, just enough to confirm something she hadn't meant to reveal. "Ryan," I said again, louder now, and she shook her head too quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice had lost that steady, controlled edge. It wavered, just for a second, and that was all it took for everything to start collapsing in my head. I stepped back, running my hand through my hair, trying to connect things that suddenly felt like they had always been connected, just hidden in plain sight. Ryan had been over more often lately. He'd started texting me less, canceling plans last minute, but always with some excuse that felt reasonable enough not to question. And Emily, she'd always liked him, but recently there was this ease between them that I had written off as comfort, as familiarity, as the kind of thing you want between your wife and your best friend. I actually remember telling someone, "I trust those two with anything." Saying it now in my head made me feel sick. "Give me the phone," Emily said again, but there was no authority in it this time, just urgency. I ignored her and typed back to the unknown number with hands that didn't feel like mine. "Who is this?" I sent, and the response came almost immediately, like they had been waiting. "Someone who's tired of watching you be the only one who doesn't know." My chest tightened so hard it actually hurt. "Know what?" I typed, and for a moment there was nothing. Just that awful silence where your mind fills in the worst possible answers on its own. Then another message appeared. "They've been using it for months, not just for storage." I looked up at Emily, really looked at her, and for the first time since this started, I didn't see confusion or defensiveness or even anger. I saw calculation. I saw her thinking, measuring what I knew against what she could still hide. "Tell me the truth," I said, and my voice sounded hollow even to me. "Does Ryan have a key to that unit?" She hesitated, and that hesitation said more than any confession ever could. "He helped me move some boxes," she said finally, carefully, like she was placing each word exactly where it needed to go. "That's all." I laughed, but there was nothing human in the sound that came out of me. "That's all?" I repeated. "Then why would someone text me this? Why would Claire warn me before you got there?" At the mention of Claire, something snapped. "Stop bringing her into this," Emily said sharply, And now the anger was real, raw, unfiltered. She has no idea what she's talking about. She overstepped, like she always does. I stared at her because it was almost impressive how quickly she could shift targets, how naturally she could redirect blame onto someone else, even now. "Then call her," I said. "Put her on speaker. Let's clear it up." She didn't move. "Call her," I said again, louder this time, and she shook her head slowly. "Not like this," she said. "You're not thinking straight." My phone buzzed again before I could respond. Another message from the unknown number. This time it wasn't text. It was a photo. I opened it, and my entire body went cold. It was the storage unit, door halfway open, and inside, clear as day, was Emily and Ryan, standing closer than they had any right to be, her hand pressed against his chest like it belonged there. And the timestamp on the photo was from yesterday. I don't remember dropping into the chair, but suddenly I was sitting, staring at that photo like if I looked long enough it would rearrange itself into something less devastating. Emily and Ryan weren't just standing close. They were standing like people who had already crossed a line and stopped pretending they hadn't. Her hand wasn't hesitant. It wasn't casual. It was familiar, like it had been there before. I looked up at her slowly, my vision narrowing, and I asked, "When?" She didn't even try to deny the photo, not immediately, and that silence was louder than anything she could have said. "It's not what you think," she finally said, and I actually laughed again, this hollow, broken sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. "That sentence doesn't work here," I told her. "There is no version of this where that sentence fixes anything." She stepped toward me, softer now, like she was approaching something fragile instead of someone she had just shattered. "You're taking one moment and building a whole story around it," she said, her voice low, controlled, almost gentle. "Ryan was helping me move things. I got emotional. That's all." I held up the phone, zoomed in on the way she was looking at him in the picture, and said, "You don't look at someone like that because you're emotional about boxes." For the first time, something sharper flashed across her face, irritation bleeding through the calm. "You're dissecting a snapshot like it's evidence in a trial," she snapped. "Do you hear yourself?" And there it was again. That shift, that attempt to drag me out of reality and into her version of it where I was the unstable one, the one overreacting, the one creating problems out of nothing. But the problem wasn't nothing. It was everywhere now. It was in the way my best friend had started avoiding eye contact with me the last few times we were together. It was in the way Emily had suddenly become protective of her schedule, her phone, her space. It was in the lies about Thursdays, the fake sleepovers with my own sister, the burner phone hidden under our dryer like I was some stranger she had to outsmart. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking, and said, "How long?" She shook her head immediately. "There is no how long," she said. "You're inventing something that isn't real." I took a step closer, close enough that she had to look directly at me, and I lowered my voice because yelling suddenly felt too easy, too simple for what this was. "Then swear to me," I said. "Swear to me that nothing has happened between you and Ryan." She didn't answer right away, and in that pause, I felt something inside me start to break in a way that wasn't loud or explosive, just quiet and final. "I'm not going to play these games," she said finally, her tone cooling again. "You're asking loaded questions so you can twist whatever I say." I nodded slowly, like I understood, even though I didn't. Not really, not fully, not yet. "Okay," I said. "Then answer a different one. Why does he have a key to a place you lied to me about?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, and for a second I saw it again, that flicker of uncertainty, like she was running out of clean exits. My phone buzzed again in my hand, and this time I didn't hesitate. I opened the message immediately. "Check the date on the lease, it's not in her name." I read that message and felt something shift again, deeper this time. Like whatever part of me was still holding on to denial finally gave up. Not in a loud way, not in some dramatic collapse, just this quiet, sinking realization that I wasn't even asking the right questions anymore because the truth was already bigger than anything I had imagined. I looked up at Emily, and for the first time since this started, I didn't see my wife standing there. I saw someone I didn't recognize, someone who had been living a completely separate life right next to mine. "The lease isn't in your name," I said slowly, watching her face as I spoke. And there it was, that tiny pause, that fraction of a second where she didn't have an answer ready. That was all the confirmation I needed. "Who's paying for it?" I asked, my voice steady in a way that scared even me. She shook her head like she was already tired of this conversation, like I was dragging her through something unnecessary. "You're chasing ghosts," she said. "You're letting some random number feed you lies and you're just, what, believing it?" I took a step toward her, not aggressive, just intentional, and held up the phone between us like it was the only honest thing in the room. "Then prove it," I said. "Show me the lease. Show me your name on it. Show me anything that makes this make sense." She crossed her arms, that defensive posture snapping back into place like armor. "I don't have to prove anything to you," she said, and that sentence landed harder than anything else she'd said all night. I nodded slowly, because she was right in a way that made everything worse. In a healthy marriage, you don't have to prove things. You don't have to defend basic reality. The fact that I was standing in my own kitchen asking my wife to verify that she wasn't lying to me about a secret storage unit tied to my best friend told me everything I needed to know about where we actually were. "You've already made up your mind," she continued, softer now, almost pitying. "Nothing I say is going to matter to you." I looked at her and said, "Then say it anyway." For a moment, she just stared at me, like she was weighing whether the truth would hurt her more than the lie. Then she exhaled, long and slow, and something in her expression changed. Not guilt, not regret, just acceptance. "It's not in my name," she admitted quietly. "It's in Ryan's." The words didn't explode. They didn't shatter the room. They just settled there, heavy and undeniable. I felt my throat tighten, my hands curl into fists at my sides. "Why?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer anymore. She hesitated again, but this time it felt different, like she was choosing which version of the truth would cause the least damage. "Because it was easier," she said. My credit was tied up with a house, and he already had one, so he added it. She said it so casually, like she was explaining a minor inconvenience, like this was normal, reasonable, something I should just accept if I stopped overreacting for 5 minutes. I stared at her, searching for something human in her face, something that resembled the woman I thought I knew, and I couldn't find it. My phone buzzed again. I almost didn't look this time. Part of me wanted to stop, to freeze the damage where it was, because every new piece made it worse in ways I couldn't prepare for. But I opened it anyway. Another photo. This one wasn't from outside the unit. It was from inside, and scattered across the floor, mixed in with random boxes and furniture, were things that didn't belong in storage at all. A blanket, a small lamp, a half-empty bottle of wine, and something that made my stomach drop so hard I had to grab the counter to stay upright. A framed photo of me and Emily from our anniversary, sitting on the floor, like it had been moved there on purpose. I don't know how long I stood there staring at that photo, but it felt like time had stopped in the worst possible way, like the world was still moving somewhere else, and I was stuck in this single moment where everything I thought was mine had been quietly relocated without me. That picture of us, the one from our anniversary, wasn't just some random thing tossed into a box. It was placed there, leaned carefully against the wall like it belonged in that space. Like whatever was happening in that storage unit had included me in some twisted, symbolic way. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and held the phone out toward Emily without looking at her. "Why is that there?" I asked, and my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It sounded distant, like it was coming from someone who had already checked out of this life. She glanced at the screen, and for the first time, she didn't have an immediate response. No deflection, no redirection, no quick explanation wrapped in just enough truth to sound believable. Just silence. That silence stretched long enough to confirm what I already felt creeping in, that this wasn't something accidental or misunderstood. This was intentional, carefully built, maintained, hidden. "It's just stuff," she said finally, but even she didn't sound convinced. "We moved things around, and that must have ended up there." I shook my head slowly, still not looking at her. "No," I said quietly. "You don't move a framed photo of your husband into a storage unit you lied about, with my best friend's name on the lease, and just forget it's there." She stepped closer again, and I could feel the shift. That pressure she always applied when she wanted control back, like she could close the distance and shrink the situation into something manageable. "You're spiraling," she said softly. "You're taking disconnected things and turning them into something ugly." I finally looked at her then, really looked. And what hit me wasn't just the denial. It was the confidence behind it. She believed she could still steer this. She believed I would doubt myself before I doubted her. And maybe the worst part was, that had worked on me before. My phone buzzed again, and this time my hands were already trembling before I even opened it, like my body had learned to brace for impact before my mind could catch up. Another message from the same number. "You're still missing it." I frowned, my chest tightening again, because I didn't know how there could possibly be more. I typed back immediately. "Missing what?" And the response came slower this time, like whoever it was wanted me to sit in that question a little longer. Then it came through. "Look at the date on that photo." I went back to the image, zoomed in, my vision narrowing until everything else disappeared, until it was just me and that frame sitting on a concrete floor in a place I had never been. And there it was, right in the corner of the picture, the timestamp from when the photo had originally been taken. My stomach dropped, because that photo wasn't from our last anniversary. It was from 3 days ago. I stared at that date until the numbers stopped feeling real, like maybe if I blinked enough times they would rearrange into something that didn't destroy me. 3 days ago. 3 days ago I was in that same house, sitting on that same couch, laughing with her about something stupid on TV while she leaned against me like nothing in the world was wrong. 3 days ago I kissed her goodnight and told her I loved her, and she said it back without hesitation, without even a crack in her voice. And at some point during that same day, that same stretch of hours, that photo was taken again and ended up in a place I didn't even know existed. A place tied to lies, to secrecy, to my best friend. I looked up at her slowly, and this time there was no confusion left in me, no doubt, no room for her to twist things into something softer. "You took that photo again," I said, my voice low and steady in a way that felt foreign, like something had hardened inside me. "You brought it there." "Recently." She didn't respond right away, and that hesitation told me everything her words hadn't yet. "Why?" I asked, and I could feel my chest tightening. Not from panic anymore, but from something heavier, something colder. "Why would you bring a picture of us into that place?" She exhaled, long and slow, like she was finally tired of holding everything up. And for the first time that night, the performance slipped in a different way. Not panic, not anger, not manipulation, just fatigue. "Because it made it easier," she said quietly. I felt my entire body go still. "Easier for what?" I asked, even though part of me already knew I wasn't going to like the answer. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Not guilt, not exactly, just the absence of whatever used to connect us. "To not feel like I was throwing everything away," she said. "To pretend it wasn't as bad as it actually was." That sentence didn't break me the way I expected. It didn't explode. It settled, like everything else, deep and heavy and permanent. "So you knew," I said quietly. "You knew exactly what you were doing." She didn't deny it. She didn't argue. She just stood there, and that silence was the most honest thing she had given me all night. I swallowed hard, my mind racing through every memory, every moment that now felt contaminated, rewritten by something I hadn't seen at the time. And Ryan? I asked. Was he pretending too? That was the question that changed everything. Because for the first time since this started, Emily didn't try to control the answer. She just shook her head slowly. No, she said. He wasn't pretending.